Real Madrid clinched their 14th Champions League trophy after edging past Liverpool 1-0 in the finals of the 2021-22 season. Carlo Ancelotti, who is the manager of Los Blancos, bagged his fourth Champions League trophy and became the most successful manager in the history of the prestigious tournament. Hello and very warm welcome to our Newsline special show, Impact of Managers on Real Madrid's success in the last one decade. Today we have with us our news editor, Mr. Sandeep Mishra, who is a huge admirer of football and has been following the beautiful game since the last 4 decades. So, Sandeep, what's there with Real Madrid and Champions League? Whenever, doesn't matter the form, whenever the Champions League comes, they deliver.
You know, I was reading this analysis when we were discussing all this, but this is something that happens, or not happens, but this is something that most coaches talk about, and it's a truism, you know, in a way that even when a good side plays their worst football and still wins, you know how much of a genius that can be, you know, and that actually takes into consideration this whole Champions League final that happened. None of those teams played well, both Real Madrid as well as Liverpool. In fact, we have discussed this. For me, the scoreline should have been 3-0 for Liverpool.
Right.
You know, because the kind of momentum they were coming in, the kind of a team they had, you look at their midfield, you look at their defense, you look at their forward line, you look at the high press that they can do, and you look at the coach. I mean, that is good enough for any side in the world to probably take a step back and say, okay, we will defend 90 minutes, we will do a Mourinho here, or we will do a Guardiola when he used to play. Right. You know, this is a stark contrast. When Guardiola played for Barcelona, he was one of the best markers. Today, he has created a football style where they have to go forward, keep the ball, have possession, and keep winning 5-0, 6-0. But coming back to the Champions League final, I think it was a Carlo match. You can say whatever you want, like Benzema was there, and this guy, and Cruz was there, Modric was there. Courtois had a probably best game of his life. I still believe it was Carlo's mind out there. I still believe it was Ancelotti who created an entire match out of virtually nothing.
Exactly. I think Liverpool were the favourites to win the trophy.
True.
And Ancelotti was considered as an underdog. And the kind of patience and calm he showed on the sideline, and the team delivered. They stayed back throughout the 90 minutes. There was a point in the match when we were discussing, when I was watching it with my friends, that we can't see Modric, we can't see Cruz. What are they doing in the match? Liverpool is dominating. And there will come a time where Real Madrid will succumb and Liverpool will score. But Courtois was making back-to-back saves. That second defensive line of Madrid was compact with the defensive line. They stayed compact and didn't give them much space to exploit. So that's where I think that Ancelotti did his homework, and that's where Klopp failed. He couldn't amaze Ancelotti.
But there's a point here also that, you know, in these kind of games, you always feel, why is a defender not moving up? You know, but if you look at these games, you go back into history, you know, right from the moment you would have watched football, or I have been watching football, even in whatever we watched on a weekend or in the Champions League, you know, in the middle of the week, the best teams are those, or rather in such tight games, especially a final, which is not supposed to be 5-0, 6-0, 4-1, 3-1, probably a 3-2 or goes to the penalties. But in a tight game, you always have midfielders, or rather the good ones are the ones who are creative, who can hold a ball, who can keep a ball, who can understand what is happening up front. They know they don't have those kind of forwards. They know Benzema is not a Salah, though Benzema has 2 back-to-back hat-tricks, which none of those guys had. But that's not the point of a final. A final is a very different game altogether. It's each person for himself trying to figure out how to carve a moment from where he can score 1 goal. So moment you have Cruz, the moment you have Modric, you know you can take the ball back, and then you have a defense line that is not supposed to move forward. The Real Madrid defense line at that point of time was highly creative. They kept the ball. They allowed the people to come in. They allowed Liverpool to come in and see if there was space or not. But that space wasn't space. That was more of, okay, this is the empty space, Salah. You can come in into here, but you can't get the ball. if you see the second half, that is exactly what was happening. And that's when you start feeling the frustration. Hey, where's Klopp? Where is that great genius Klopp? Where is that mind going? And you don't see the mind. And then you recall and you look at Carlo. I mean, he might have been sitting on the sideline smoking a cigar for all that you care, or probably a beer on the side, and you know, or probably playing cards, because I was reading this story where 3 hours before the match, half of Madrid was playing cards on the side. So you can understand the relaxed state they were in. And I think that is exactly what you saw in the final.
As you mentioned about the midfielders, all the midfielders, Modric, Kroos, Casemiro, they have bagged 5 Champions League trophies. Yeah. And they have been backed by Ancelotti and Zidane in the last 1 decade. Ancelotti won the 13-14 final with Champions League, then he again won this season. Then Zidane won 3 back-to-back trophies. Both were midfielders back in their day when they were players. Zidane used to play with that ease. Ancelotti used to take those long-range shots. So what kind of impact does these managers have had on the midfielders, current midfielders of Real Madrid?
I think it's pretty evident. Zidane was under Carlo also, you know, virtually the apprentice.
Okay.
The apprentice is now, you know, then later on became the boss. 3 consecutive Champions League. Is that what Zidane won?
Yeah.
I mean, that's unbelievable, first of all. You know,
Yeah.
I mean, you can't even put it as genius, because you have to have a word which is better than that. You know, in a Champions League where you're struggling in the league, and then you're going on and winning this. But I think a lot of teams are prepared around their coaches. You probably didn't see the same thing when Mourinho was there. They had the maximum number of points. They were scoring a high number of goals. I think that was one big season.
Best counter-attacking team.
Absolutely. And then taking on Barcelona. So you had a very different approach to all of that. I think this particular team is in the mold of Zidane, is in the mold of Ancelotti for sure. But overall, it is in the mold that Real plays, and that is with a certain style. And that style actually defines Real Madrid, win or lose. Of course, nobody wants to lose. That's a different story. No coach would ever say that. But if you ask Perez, like we were discussing a little earlier, Perez always wants style. Perez will not say that, okay, 1-0, but play with style. 4-0 without style, he will sack you. Fabio Capello is a great coach, was sacked after winning, simply because he was not following the Real Madrid project style completely. So, I mean, in a way, coaches deform the style, and of course the club also is there. But this only goes for at least 6 to 7 of the top clubs. The rest still have to win, you know, to come to the middle of the table or somewhere. But for these clubs, they can still afford style.
Maybe the mid-table clubs or lower table clubs can't have that mentality that we have to stick by their DNA. They want the results to go high up the table first.
Yeah, but then why did Ancelotti leave Everton then? I mean, it's a simple thing. It wasn't moving for him. And I think when a coach moves, especially in a move like that, he actually realized he could take Real Madrid somewhere. And Ancelotti is style in so many ways. You know, at the end of the day, I mean, look at the way he dresses. I mean, all of these are important, mind you. This is very important for a club, especially like Real Madrid. So I think all of that mattered. And whatever you saw and whatever this whole resurgence of the midfield now, but that's a question that probably you would answer much better, in a sense that for me it would be for me a question would be, how important is midfield today, looking at all the leagues? I mean, do you really feel that that is exactly the core?
Yeah, I feel that midfielders specifically lack the recognition that they should get from time to time. The kind of pass that Modric delivered to Rodrigo against Chelsea in the second leg, that was the game changer. If not for that pass, Real Madrid would have been out of the quarterfinals. Then Casemiro does all the dirty work for Real Madrid. This season he made 76 ball recoveries throughout the season. That is averaging 7 per match. So no one sees that. Everyone cares about who scored the goal. Whether it was Benzema is in limelight because he scored hat-tricks, he scored braces, he scored goals at crucial junctures. But who delivered the ball to Benzema? There was a point even Kamavinga played a great role in the build-up stages, but no one realizes that. As we were discussing earlier, if a goalkeeper commits a mistake, everyone will remember that. But if he makes a good save, hardly people remember that. So whether it be goalkeeper, defenders or midfielders, their hard work goes unrecognized. So that's what I feel, and as we have discussed earlier as well, a midfield is the beating heart of the team, as you have told earlier. And I totally agree with that. Midfielder is the link between a defender and an attacker. If the midfield is not in proper structure, if there is not a proper central defensive midfielder with which United was struggling this season, with which Liverpool and City has thrived because they have Fabinho and Rodri. So a central defensive midfielder, a creative attacking midfielder like De Bruyne or Thiago. So these players allow the strikers to shine eventually. If not for them, then.
But taking on another question, I mean, do you think City's win? Let's put it into the EPL thing. I mean, just go away from the CL for a bit. You think this whole City win is because of pushing, or not pushing, but actually pulling players who could be excellent centre forwards, making them into some form of a modified midfielder, an attacking midfielder, is what has given Guardiola this whole championship? I mean, is that true or is that false?
I would agree to that because Bernardo Silva, he was a winger initially, then he started playing as an attacking midfielder. Now City played the whole season without a number 9. Still, there wasn't a game where, like, there were some instances when Guardiola was criticized that you don't have a proper number 9, but in most of the matches, they scored goals, whether through a winger or KDB went forward and scored goals, or Jesus, who dropped deep into the false 9 position and created link-up play and scored goals. So, in that system, the role of attacking midfielders was very crucial. And that's what Guardiola has done at Man City. He has transformed the way attacking midfielders should play. He has given KDB that free role. You can go up, score goals, come deep, create link-up play, go on the wings, deliver those crosses. So that's the kind of different things that a midfielder needs to do if the team needs to shine eventually.
And I think also picking up from there, a lot of people, I mean, let's assume or let's think that Guardiola was in Barcelona. You know, he wasn't part of that. He was somewhere else. I still believe that, you know, looking at the Champions League and all of the matches that have happened, especially in the EPL also, is that he would never have been Real Madrid coach. You know, Madrid would never have taken him. You know, also because, again, coming back to style, it's also a very true fact about Madrid is that they don't like complexity in football. For them, it is simple. Yet, they are the ones who brought Galacticos, you know. They are the ones who got a fabulous player like Figo at that time. I mean, they had Roberto Carlos who could move up. Exactly what we were thinking before is they want players who could flow. For them, flow was the essential part. Win, lose, fine, keep it on the side for the moment, but flow was important. But not for Guardiola, because for him, more triangles, more algebra happening out there, much more complex. Okay, now this is football for him. But I think that is where Klopp somehow lost the plot. I think he moved away from what he was good at. He got boxed in by Carlo. He got boxed in by the midfield of Real Madrid. And these guys just couldn't move. And I think the second half was a freeze. It was just a freeze where nothing was working. But it's surprising. What surprises me is that somebody like Klopp can come down to that, which is massively surprising.
Yeah, and Klopp has lost 3 of the 4 Champions League final that he has been part of.
True.
So what do you think that he lacks in that final bit, in that later stages of the tournament? Why can't he deliver in the finals?
I think for that, you probably need to go back to the Champions League final. I think Dortmund versus Bayern, and you'll find a lot of answers there. That Dortmund team should have won it. Not that Bayern wasn't good, but he built a side that exactly like Madrid could flow. But in that, I still remember probably the second half of the second half, you know, the last 20 minutes or so, where Bayern completely took them over. Not that they were going to score goals, but they kept the ball to themselves, not letting Klopp's team play. And I think in that 20 minutes, you actually see that moment the ball is taken away and the entire exercise of of controlling a match falls into the other team's half and falls into the other coach, I think that's the time when Klopp really suffers. And if you see the draws that he's had, they are all coming from that particular mentality. Not to say that he's not a great coach. He's absolutely a genius in terms of, formations and structures and finding the right player for his club, which is another massively big thing that a club needs. But I think there must be a fact that if you're not going to win a final, then there is something wrong with the way you probably built it up. And that is something that even Guardiola is being accused of.
Yeah, like he hasn't won the Champions League with Man City, winning it 2 times with Barcelona back in 2008 and 9, then in 10, 11 and 12. But nothing with Man City, despite such a spectacular team, such a good squad. He hasn't been able to deliver.
True.
So, do you think that his stubbornness is the reason behind his failure?
Well, even Guardiola is stubborn. I mean, leading 1-0, losing 1-0, losing 2-0, he keeps playing the same formation. He just doesn't change. Even if it's a semi-final or final, and we've seen him losing from absolutely winning positions. I mean, how can you lose a game that you're leading 5-3 or whatever? I mean, you can't. I mean, you just need to box something. It's easier for us to sit here and say that.
Yeah.
Fine. But at the end of the day, this is what most coaches do. They bring the whole structure together and ensure that nothing can filter through. But he wants to keep playing that system over. I think Klopp probably does the same. I think they are in a mold where it's wrong to play defensive. They are in a mold where high press is Klopp's game. They are in a mold where they are not going to sit back and understand what Carlo might be playing. They are not willing to understand a 1-0 win is great enough. But I think the Benzema offside or not offside, whatever that was the turning point. I think that's where Liverpool completely lost
That
it.
shifted the mentality of the players.
And I think that's what, I mean, it's circumstances, it's moments, it's 2 seconds, it's 4 seconds. We sometimes look at the whole picture. The whole picture is not a picture. The picture is 3 seconds somewhere, 5 seconds somewhere. In that particular moment, I think a lot of fans also felt that Benzema has done something without doing anything to change the whole narrative of the match. And I think that's what settled it right out there.
Yeah, very well mentioned. So also talking about like the way Claudio Ranieri guided Leicester City to the Premier League trophy back in 2016. So no one expected that, and he delivered. And delivering it in the Premier League is very tough because 19 matches at home, 19 matches away from home, and then he didn't have a great squad. A squad with big names. So what goes on throughout the season in the mind of the players, in the mind of coach, to lead a side, such a average side, to lead them to a title?
Wasn't an average side, honestly. A lot of those players have gone on.
After a certain moment, they became...
Yeah. But I think it was also, if you really look at that particular year, it was also a transition for a lot of clubs. I think, not to take the credit away, honestly, they played fabulous football. Ranieri was going against the very grain of the football that he plays, and he plays a very muddled midfield, normally, most of the time. That is why if you see his record, you will always see him losing a lot of games in the last 10 minutes. The whole muddled midfield, he can't get out of it, and that's in his mind, most of the time. But there, he had a fabulous front line. He had...
Vardy.
They all came into form. They all started playing in a way that they had never played before. And even Kasper Schmeichel, he had a great year. I mean, there were some saves I still remember against some of the top 4-5 clubs that were unbelievable. Something like what you saw in the Champions League. I mean, it was a team that came together. And Ranieri was right in the middle of it for all the glory, which he deserves completely. And you can see that happening everywhere. Even when Atletico came into the whole picture of winning in Spain, you could understand that there was a churn happening. Even when Naples won for the first time, there was a churn happening. But again, looking at that Naples win, which Diego Maradona was there, it was all about the midfield again. It was about one guy who was holding everything together. And the same goes in Leicester's favour, the same goes, and these are all coach-driven things. As to which philosophy you're going to follow, which style you're going to follow. And it takes 2-3 years before the rest can catch up.
Right.
and that is what is happening in most of the circuits everywhere.
As we are talking about great managers here, how can we not mention Jose Mourinho? He recently bagged the Conference League title with AS Roma, who won their first European title since 1981. So I think that he's one of your favorite managers. So what's your take on Mourinho, on his recent success after a period of turbulence where he faced highs and lows, faced two sackings he was at United, then he got sacked. He then managed Tottenham Hotspur, then he got sacked. So how was this Conference League win as a fan for you?
Well, he's a classic example of how you can be your own enemy, the complete classic example of how you can destroy yourself sometimes in the whole process of building a team. But if you just look at the Roma part, number one, it was very surprising. I still remember you telling me that, why the hell is he going to Roma and what is he going to do there? I mean, Roma was 6th and the 7th at that point of time. But the question was, I think for him, top clubs are out, unless a Real Madrid calls him back. And there is a rumor already circulating that maybe a season or two down the line, after he's won something again with Roma, he probably will play his last one with Real Madrid. He's got a both Perez and he are pretty close in that sense. But if you look at the European win, okay, it's not a top-notch win. Let's be very, very sure about that. It's not even a third tier. At the end of the day, a win is a win, and you still got to go all that way to the final to win. Feyenoord may not be on the top-notch teams in Europe right now, but Feyenoord plays a very, very good style of football. They could have easily won that game also. They could have easily drawn that game, honestly, could have taken it to penalties. But for Jose to bring that entire fan ideology back, to bring a city back to where it belonged in terms of football, to have Totti sitting in the stands and saying that, okay, this is what we all wanted all these years, I think this is what he thrives on. This is what he has thrived on in every club he's played. Whether it was Porto or coached, whether it was Porto or whether he was at Chelsea or Madrid, he has thrived on all of this. For the first time, I think he's not being divisive, at least not now. I don't know what happens in the next season. But if he stays on for 2 years and if he's backed, well, winning the league, I honestly don't know if they can go all that way, but a top 3 should be there for them. So which means playing the Champions League. And if you can just play one Champions League, taking the team there, I think that will be a massive achievement for Roma.
Yeah, certainly. And also talking about, as we were discussing earlier about Casemiro, Modric, Kroos, they have won 5 Champions League titles. And it's like there are some of the teams in Europe, in England specifically, who has not even bagged like 3 or 4 titles. Liverpool has the most after Real Madrid, 6. So there is a major Liverpool with 6, AC Milan with 7, then Real Madrid with 14. So there is a major gap in the success of clubs in terms of European success. But being a player and notching 5 Champions League titles is a big thing. So what do you think about the success of these midfielders? How have they thrived in the past 1 decade?
They picked the right club, let's put it like that. And the club picks the right player. I don't know if you remember, Ballack went to Chelsea. Okay, he was supposed to be this massive thing that's now come. Chelsea is going to open up. They did. But Ballack also suffered because he is used to playing a massively amount of free flow that comes in by passing to the right and to the left and moving up and taking the ball. But you had a lot of good midfielders in Chelsea at that time and he really couldn't take the transition too much. I think when Kroos, and if you remember, Kroos was supposed to go to United. He went to Real. So when a player chooses, it's just not the manager, it's not the agent telling him. It's also his mind telling him where I can be good. It's also what the other coach of that club is telling him. So a lot of credit, let's put it that way, goes to the club, goes to the coach who was at that time to be able to identify a particular player and say that this guy is going to be here for 6 years. Okay, Gareth Bale was one of them. Okay. But he still had that massively brilliant bicycle kick. Yeah. I mean, who can forget all of that? It's another matter that he went away in a different direction. But if you look at Real Madrid's last 10 years, it's always about taking the right player in the right positions that they want in. Eden Hazard was a great choice. Yeah. Injuries and all of that is a different story. But Hazard embodies and takes in what Real Madrid actually stands for. A lot of style and scoring. This is what they always want. And I think when you look at Kroos, when you look at Modric, you always feel that they can't fit in anywhere because they're so much adapted to Real Madrid style that you almost, it's like saying Ryan Giggs and all of those guys, they were all United guys. They couldn't probably fit in anywhere.
It's in their blood now.
Yeah, completely.
We will leave it on that note, and thank you so much, Sandeep.
Thank you.
It was a fun chat. And now we will leave you with some of the shots from the Champions League celebrations back in Madrid.
Si no, la gente se tiraría al asfalto. Pero claro, estamos que por cada sitio por donde iba esperando la llegada del autocar del Real Madrid, ¿no? Tú que tienes más en memoria, multiplicado desde entonces de una forma exponencial hasta el punto de que ahora el mejor futbolista del mundo ahora mismo reciente es un título muy importante y que devaluar, ¿no? Devaluar en ese sentido, efectivamente, esa es la palabra, devaluar este título.
No, en absoluto.
Que nos has dado a la Virgen María como madre y